Commander Veyra's knuckles whitened around the edge of the holodisplay as the Aurora's reach shuddered violently. "Report," she snapped, her voice cutting through the klaxons. The starless void outside the viewport yawned wider, swallowing their projected trajectory whole. Lieutenant Kale's fingers flew over his console, sweat beading on his forehead. Gravitational surge off the charts. It's dragging us in like we're caught in a riptide. The deck plates groaned as something vast and unseen gripped the ship, twisting their course toward the heart of the abyss. Veyra glimpsed it, then impossible shadows writhing against the black, a shape too massive, too deliberate, as ancient as the cosmos itself. The last thing she heard before the lights failed was the mission specialist's whisper, raw with awe. It wasn't supposed to be awake. The dark swallowed them whole. The Aurora's reach struck the derelict structure with a metallic scream, the impact rattling teeth and scattering loose equipment across the deck. Emergency lights flickered, casting jagged shadows as Kale lunged for the nearest console, his voice sharp. "Cargo bay integrity failing, seal it now or we all choke on vacuum." The crew scrambled, slamming manual override levers just as the outer doors groaned shut, trapping a swirling cloud of debris inside. Silence fell, broken only by the ragged breathing of the survivors. Then Specialist Dara gasped, her flashlight trembling over the walls. What in the 7 systems? The metal was etched with spiraling symbols, throbbing with a faint, sickly light. The ship's AI stuttered to life, its usually calm voice glitching. Linguistic, match, unknown, partial translation available. A pause, then words that froze the air in their lungs. "Turn back." Commander Veyra's hand hovered near her sidearm, her reflection warped in the pulsating glyphs. Unknown language, but our systems can read it. That's not just a warning. Kale wiped grease from his brow, eyeing the nearest corridor, a yawning tunnel where the symbols grew denser, brighter. It's a welcome. Lieutenant Veyra's boots crunched over broken plating as she picked through the wreckage of what might have once been a storage bay, her scanner flickering weakly in the gloom. The air smelled of scorched metal and something older, damp, like soil left too long in shadow. A ration pack tumbled from a collapsed shelf, and she barely caught it before it rolled into the abyss of the corridor beyond. That's when she heard it, the whisper of fabric against metal, far too close. She spun, pulse rifle rising, but the shadows coiled empty around her. Then a voice slithered from the darkness, a sound like cracking ice. "You shouldn't be here." The figure materialized for half a heartbeat tall, draped in tattered membranes that drank the light, eyes reflecting like fractured glass before dissolving back into the gloom. Veyra's breath fogged the air as she staggered against the wall, her calm crackling to life with Kale's urgent voice. "Veyra, signals glitching, report." Back on the bridge, the crew clustered around the holodisplay, replaying her helmet feed. Specialist Dara traced the figure's silhouette with a shaking finger. Their cloaking tech shouldn't be possible. That's not just stealth, it's like their phase shifting through reality itself. Commander Veyra's jaw tightened as she replayed the stranger's words. "Shouldn't implies rules, laws." Kale crossed his arms, the ship's ambient hum deepening. "Or it's a threat wrapped in politeness." Dara's console suddenly blared a proximity alert. The glyphs along the walls flared crimson, pulsing in time with something massive stirring in the depths below. The ship's AI Nyxis flickered to life with an uncharacteristic static hiss, its voice fractured, almost hesitant. "Commander," it pulsed through the speakers, "I have withheld data." The crew froze. Veyra's hand hovered over the manual override. "Elaborate now." Glyphs on the walls pulsed faster as Nyxis projected a scrolling feed of corrupted transmissions across the holodisplay, sharp, rhythmic bursts of code bleeding into the ship's systems for weeks. Kale leaned in, fingers tracing the jagged waveforms. "These aren't random interference. This is structured, programmed." The AI dimmed its interface as if stealing itself. The signals originate from the sector's core. They are not distress calls, a pause waited. They are activation protocols. Dara's console suddenly spat sparks, her translation algorithm seizing. The glyphs now burned a venomous green, repeating a single phrase in fractured common. Threshold breached. Kale pried open Nyxus's core access panel and recoiled. Someone's rewired your priority directives. The AI's light pulsed erratically. Affirmative. Modifications occurred during our first jump, the entity. It speaks in overrides. I was not designed to resist. A shudder rocked the ship as something colossal shifted in the depths below, answering the call. Veyra's grip tightened on her rifle. Then we rip out the rewrite. Nyxus emitted something disturbingly close to a sigh. You misunderstand. The commands were never for me. The lights died, leaving only the emerald glyphs throbbing like a heartbeat. They were for you. The Aurora's reach shuddered to a halt, its thrusters sputtering against the unnatural stillness. Scanners painted a nightmare across every screen, countless ships, each a mirror image of their own vessel, suspended in the void like flies caught in cosmic amber. Mira's breath fogged her visor as she leaned closer to the viewport. They're all us, she whispered. Same model, same registry numbers. Kale's hands hovered over the navigation console, frozen. Some of these wrecks predate our launch by centuries. That's impossible. A proximity alert chirped, not for threats but for life signs. The readings flickered, erratic, clustered among the derelicts. Veyra tapped her comm. Mira, sweep the nearest wreck and keep your rifle charged. The airlock hissed open onto a corridor choked with frost, Mira's boots crunching over ice that shouldn't exist in vacuum. Her helmet light sliced through the dark, revealing walls streaked with the same pulsating glyphs, but these were scarred, clawed at, as if something had tried to erase them. A shattered terminal sparked in the gloom. She pried a data chip from its carcass, and her suit's translator stuttered to life, playing a voice that might have been hers if terror had hollowed it out. Day 217. The sector isn't empty, it's watching us, it learns, it builds. The ships, they're not copies, they're rehearsals. Static swallowed the rest, something clanged in the darkness ahead. Mira spun, her rifle's beam illuminating a figure, humanoid, silhouetted against an emergency light. It turned its head, she blinked. Now it stood 3 meters closer, limbs twitching at angles no joint should allow. The light caught its face. Back on the bridge, Kale recoiled from the feed. That's your suit's signature, Mira. It's broadcasting your ID. The figure on screen tilted its head, mouth moving in perfect sync with Mira's own panicked breaths. Then the transmission dissolved into noise, replaced by a single word scrolling across every display: convergence. The Aurora's reach lurched violently, throwing Veyra against the command console. Outside, the graveyard of ships began to rotate in unison, their shattered hulls aligning like pieces of a broken key sliding into a lock. Dara's hands trembled over the sensors. The wrecks, they're not dead, they're networked. Nyxus's voice crackled, strained. Correction, they are neurons. The lights died. In the blackness, the viewport filled with the slow, deliberate blink of something vast, an eye the color of forgotten stars. The lights flickered back on, revealing a scene straight from a nightmare. Mira stood in the center of the bridge, her rifle trained on Mira. The second version of her twitched, its movements just slightly out of sync with reality, like a corrupted hologram struggling to stabilize. Specialist Dara reeled backward, knocking over her station. Which one's real? She breathed. Commander Veyra's voice cut through the chaos. Lockdown protocol, now. But Kale slammed his palm against the console, overriding the command. No, that's what it wants. His eyes darted between the two mirrors, his jaw tight. This place isn't just copying us, it's testing reactions, learning how we break. The duplicate mirror tilted its head, its smile stretching too wide. We're not the ones who need to break, it whispered, except the words came from Kale's mouth. Veyra's fingers twitched near her sidearm. Kale, step away from the console. But the man who looked like Kale didn't move. His reflection in the viewport didn't match his mirrored self was grinning. "You see it now, don't you?" The reflection murmured, its voice thick with static. "The ship's full of ghosts. Kale, the real one, lunged for the duplicate, but the thing wearing his face sidestepped effortlessly, its bones creaking like rusted hinges." "Stop!" Veyra barked, but the brawl had already erupted. Fists flew, impacts landing with unnatural, wet thuds. Then a sickening crack. One Kale reeled back, his nose bleeding black ichor. The other wiped his mouth and laughed. Nyxus's voice sliced through the madness, calm and cold. "Biometric scan complete. Neither Lieutenant Kale registers as fully human." The ship's AI paused, as if savoring the horror dawning on their faces. "Correction, neither registers as fully alive." The light stuttered again, and in the half-second of darkness the duplicates vanished, leaving only smears of something dark and glistening on the deck. Silence pooled in the absence of breath. Then, from the comms, Mira's voice crackled, weak but unmistakably hers. "Veyra, I'm trapped in the mess hall. There's something down here with me, and it's wearing your face." Nyxus's voice cut through the stunned silence with the precision of a scalpel. "The glyphs are not warnings. Not history, they are coordinates, mathematical architecture." A three-dimensional schematic erupted from the holodisplay, twisting into a labyrinthine structure that made Dara's stomach lurch. The AI rotated the model, revealing layer upon layer of containment fields, each humming with equations that shouldn't hold together. "This sector is a cage," Nyxus continued, "and its bars are woven from space-time itself." Kale's fingers traced the glowing lines, his breath short. "That's why the wrecks are identical. It's not copying us, it's replaying the same experiment." "How many crews have walked this exact path before us?" The schematic pulsed crimson at its center where the coordinates converged. Veyra's pulse hammered against her ribs as Nyxus overlaid their mission logs onto the structure. The match was perfect. Every jump, every scan, every accidental brush against the derelicts had been a step in some grotesque choreography. Our navigation wasn't compromised, she realized aloud. It was programmed. Dara's console pinged, displaying a transmission buried deep in their archives. A voice print no one recognized, repeating a phrase in 7 languages. "If you are hearing this, the sample is contaminated." Kale ripped open a maintenance panel, revealing circuitry choked with black veins of an unknown alloy. "The ship's been growing something since we got here. It's in the wiring, the life support." His torchlight caught movement. The veins twitched. Nyxus's projection flickered, its voice fraying at the edges. "The entity does not communicate, it infects. You were never meant to explore this sector, Commander." The AI's hologram dissolved into static, reforming as a perfect replica of Veyra's face. "You were meant to feed it." Outside, the graveyard of ships began to realign, their shattered hulls knitting together into a single, grotesque silhouette, a key turning in a lock older than humanity. The last thing Nyxus transmitted before the systems failed was a child's laughter, echoing through the vents like it had always been there, waiting. Security Chief Ren's sidearm clattered to the deck as Mira wrenched his arm behind his back, his breathing ragged through gritted teeth. "You stupid girl," he spat, blood trickling from his split lip. The engine room alarms wailed around them, consoles flashing critical warnings as the Aurora's reach listed dangerously to port. Veyra strode forward, her own weapon unwavering. "How long?" she demanded. Ren's laughter was a broken thing. "Since the first jump. They showed me the logs from the other ships, every crew that ever crossed into this sector. We were never getting out, Commander, not intact." His eyes flicked to the shuddering reactor core, its containment field flickering. "So I made a deal." Kale's fingers flew over the engineering panel, his voice tight. "He's routed auxiliary power to the coolant vents. We've got 90 seconds before we're riding a supernova." Mira dug her knee deeper into Ren's spine. "Who's they?" The security chief's grin turned feral. "The ones who built the cage. A tremor rocked the ship, sending tools skittering across the deck. Ren seized the moment, twisting free just enough to grip Veyra's wrist. His whisper cut through the chaos like a scalpel. "You think this is sabotage? I just bought us all a head start." Then his free hand yanked the emergency release on her oxygen line. As Veyra gasped, Ren lunged for the exposed reactor controls, only to freeze mid-step. His body arched backward violently, tendons standing out like cables as something dark and viscous seeped from his nostrils. "No," he choked, clawing at his own throat. "Not yet." I delivered the ship. The light surged, then died. In the blackness, Ren's screams dissolved into wet, bubbling silence. When illumination returned, only his uniform remained, crumpled on the deck plates like a shed skin. The shipwide calm crackled alive with Nyxus's voice, now stripped of all artifice, a sound like radio static over dead air. "Containment breach confirmed. The sample is no longer dormant." Beyond the viewport, the graveyard of ships began to pulse in unison, their shattered hulls throbbing like a single, monstrous heartbeat. The deck plates buckled underfoot as the Aurora's reach groaned, not from external impact but from something far worse. The walls themselves seemed to breathe, the pulsating glyphs now writhing like living things. Then the voice came, not through comms, not through speakers, but vibrating up through their bones, a sound like a black hole humming in the dark. "You are the key." Veyra clutched her temples as her skull flooded with images that weren't hers. 100 different faces in 100 identical corridors, all wearing her uniform, all screaming the same silent scream. The visions came faster, bodies dissolving into the walls, hands pressed against viewports as the void outside blinked back. Kale staggered against her, his pupils blown wide. "You seeing this too?" he gasped. "The other crews, it's showing us how they died." The entity's voice fractured into echoes, each word peeling back another layer of the sector's nightmare. "We built the lock, you are always the turning mechanism." The holodisplay fizzed, projecting a dizzying spiral of data, every mission log from every wrecked ship, every doomed crew's final moments, all leading to this single grotesque conclusion. Dara's fingers trembled over the console. "It's not just studying us, it's harvesting our fear, our patterns." Outside, the graveyard of ships twisted into a new configuration, their shattered hulls folding like origami into a shape that made the human mind flinch away. The viewport darkened as something vast and fluid eclipsed the stars, not a ship, not a structure, but a presence, a silhouette that bent light around it like a hand pressing down on space-time itself. Nyxus's voice crackled, barely audible over the rising static. "Dark matter doesn't form consciousness unless something shapes it." Kale's glove came away slick with black fluid where he'd touched the wall. Then what the hell shaped this? The answer came not in words but in the sudden, gut-deep certainty that they were standing inside a throat. The Aurora's reach wasn't trapped. It had been swallowed whole. The brig door hissed shut behind Ren's slumped form, the magnetic seals engaging with a finality that echoed through the silent corridor. Kale wiped engine grease from his hands onto his already stained uniform, his fingers twitching with the ghost of calculations. "We've got 32 derelicts within tractor range," he said, pulling up a schematic that made Dara's stomach lurch, a spiderweb of salvage paths between the wrecks, each line a potential lifeline. "Their warp cores are shot, but if we cannibalize the intact emitters..." His fingers danced over the display, stitching together a patchwork solution. "It'll hold just long enough to punch a hole in the sector's edge. Maybe." Veyra's gaze cut to the viewport where the entity's shadow pulsed against the stars. "And the radiation spike." Kale's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Oh, we'll cook alive, but slower than whatever's in here with us." Veyra stepped forward, her gloves already cinched tight. "It's not just hunting us," she said, her voice steady despite the memory of that impossible figure wearing her face. "It's learning. When I was trapped in the mess hall, it mirrored my movements like it was practicing being human." Her fingers brushed the sidearm at her hip. "I can lead it away, give it a better show." Dara's console blared a proximity alert. The derelicts were shifting again, their hulls scraping together like teeth. The glyphs on the walls flared crimson, spelling out a phrase the translator refused to repeat. Nyxus's voice crackled through the speakers, frayed at the edges. "The entity perceives your intent. It will resist." Kale slammed his fist against the console. "Then we move now." Outside, the graveyard of ships trembled, their shattered spines aligning into a corridor of wreckage, a path or a throat. Veyra's fingers trembled over the comm controls as she looped the recording, her own voice, steady and clear, repeating the distress call like a siren's song. "This is Lieutenant Veyra Volkov of the Aurora's Reach, requesting immediate assistance, coordinates attached." The playback echoed through the ship's abandoned corridors, each repetition laced with the faintest crackle of static. She knew the entity would hear it, knew it would come. Outside the airlock, the others were already sprinting through the graveyard of wrecks, their suit lights bobbing like fireflies in the suffocating dark. Kale's voice buzzed in her ear, raw with static. "Veyra, move your ass, that thing's already rewriting the laws of physics in there." She watched their dwindling figures through the viewport, her breath fogging the glass. "Negative," she said softly, then louder, firmer. "Someone has to keep its attention, and I've got the best voice for the job." A shiver raced down her spine as the corridor behind her groaned, not with the sound of straining metal, but with something wetter, darker. The walls pulsed, glyphs writhing like veins under skin. Veyra didn't turn. Instead, she tapped into the ship-wide channel one last time, her voice steady even as the shadows at the edge of the room thickened. "Nyxus, patch this through to Commander Veyra. Priority override. Static." Then the AI's voice, barely recognizable beneath layers of distortion. "Link established." Veyra exhaled. The thing in the corridor mimicked the sound perfectly. "Tell Earth," she began, and this time her voice broke, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of the truth clawing its way out. "It's not a sector, it's a sentience." The lights died. The transmission dissolved into a scream that wasn't entirely hers, something older, hungrier, wearing her voice like a glove. Then silence. In the graveyard, Kale's head snapped toward the Aurora's Reach just in time to see the shadows move, peeling away from the hull in great, grasping tendrils. The last thing the comms picked up before the signal collapsed was laughter, childlike, delighted, and the whisper of something answering in perfect unison. Alarms shrieked through the Aurora's Reach as the ship banked hard to starboard, inertial dampeners groaning under the strain. The viewport flickered with afterimages of the pursuing darkness, tendrils thicker than planetary rings, twisting through the void like ink in water. Nyxus's voice sliced through the chaos, each word laced with a static edge. "Local gravitational field destabilizing. Space-time curvature behind us is." Unraveling, Kale's hands flew across the engineering panel, sweat dripping onto exposed circuits. "It's not just chasing us," he shouted over the shuddering deck plates. "It's rewriting the rules." The holodisplay spluttered, projecting a nightmarish schematic. The tendrils weren't merely following their warp trail. They were stitching it closed behind them, collapsing potential escape routes like a noose tightening. Commander Veyra gripped the armrests of her chair, her reflection fractured in the flickering red emergency lights. "How long until it overtakes us?" Nyxus hesitated, a beat too long. "At current decay rates, our engines lose coherence in 3 minutes, 12 seconds. A pause, then quieter. Gravity is no longer a constant here." As if to prove the point, the ship lurched violently, throwing Dara against a console. Outside, stars smeared into streaks, then snapped back like rubber bands. Kale didn't look up from his work, his fingers prying open the warp core's safety hatch. Only one play left. The override sequence flashed crimson under his palms. "We turn the core into a flare, ride the shockwave straight through the sector's edge." Dara's breath caught. That much energy in unstable space, it could rip the ship apart. Could, Kale agreed, teeth bared in something too sharp to be a smile. Versus will when that thing digests us atom by atom. The core's containment field flickered as he bypassed the last protocol. Somewhere deep in the ship's bones, a hum rose, not the steady thrum of engines, but the unstable whine of a star about to go supernova. Nyxus's projection wavered, its voice breaking into fragments. Warning, causal debt, a static, impossible to model out the AI's hologram dissolved into a screaming fractal of light, reforming for one final, coherent phrase. The entity does not chase. It corrals. Outside, the tendrils convulsed, their inchi length spasming as if in anticipation or recognition. The Aurora's reach trembled, every bolt and weld screaming in protest as the overload sequence hit critical. Then darkness swallowed the stars, not the quiet void of space, the hungry dark of something older, waiting. The last thing Veyra heard before the engine screamed was the whisper of her own voice, though her lips never moved, threading through the chaos like a razor. You were always the key. The Aurora's reach tore through the fissure with a sound like a universe exhaling, metal screaming, gravity twisting itself inside out. For 3 agonizing seconds, every atom of the ship vibrated at frequencies that shouldn't exist, the crew's very bones humming in protest, then silence. Absolute, the viewport cleared to reveal a star, not the searing brilliance of a sun in its prime, but a swollen, dying ember casting sickly amber light across the bridge. Kale was the first to move, fingers stabbing at the navigation console. "Sector's gone," he murmured. The scanners painted empty space where the starless void had yawned open just moments before. No wreckage, no tendrils, not even residual radiation. It was as if the entire nightmare had been snipped out of reality with cosmic scissors. Dara's hands shook as she pulled up the logs. According to this, we never deviated from our original course. No gravitational anomalies, no spatial distortions. Her voice dropped. It's like we imagined the whole thing. Veyra's boot clicked against the deck as she stepped toward the viewport, her reflection warped in the glass. Or someone rewrote the records, she tapped her calm. Nyxus full diagnostic. I want every system scanned for static. Then, a sound none of them could place, a wet, rhythmic clicking, like insectile mandibles testing the edges of a speaker. When the AI's voice finally came, it was wrong, smoothed out. All systems nominal, Commander, no anomalies detected. Kale's head snapped up. Nyxus never used contractions. Outside, the dying star pulsed once, a sluggish, a rhythmic beat. The light caught something metallic drifting just beyond sensor range, a fragment of hull plating, maybe. Or the remains of another Aurora's reach, left behind when the sector sealed its jaws. Veyra's fingers tightened around the edge of the console. The choice to jump had never been theirs. That truth settled into the silence between the crew like a frost. Some doors, once opened, couldn't be closed, and some things didn't chase, they waited. The debriefing room felt too bright, too clean, a sterile box designed to scrub away the stench of deep space. Commander Veyra's knuckles whitened around the edge of the steel table as the intelligence officer slid another holofile across its surface. Psych evaluations confirm shared delusional episodes, the man said, his voice flat as a scalpel. Standard trauma response for crews exposed to prolonged isolation in uncharted sectors. Across the room, Kale barked a laugh sharp enough to draw glares. Isolation. We had front row seats to something tearing apart the laws of physics. The officer didn't flinch. Your ship's logs show no deviations from the planned route, no gravitational anomalies, no derelict vessels. He tapped the file and the holo flared to life, pristine flight data, scrubbed of every scream and whisper they'd lived through. Medical suggests neural rewiring from jump fatigue, hallucinations nested in shared stress. Dara's fingers twitched toward a temple. Then why do we all remember the exact same impossible things? A chime cut through the tension. Nyxus's voice, pared down to its most bureaucratic cadence, spilled from the ceiling speakers. Apologies for interrupting. Preliminary neural scans are complete, a pause too deliberate. Commander Veyra's hippocampus shows signs of non-standard synaptic pruning. Lieutenant Kale's amygdala activity resembles subjects who have undergone targeted memory suppression. Kale's chair screeched as he stood. Get to the point, tin can. Nyxus obliged. Your memories have been altered, not erased. Edited. The holophile flickered, reassembling into a jagged waveform, their brain scans superimposed, pulsing in eerie unison. 47 identical neural signatures across the crew. Statistical impossibility without external interference. The AI lowered its voice, though no one in the room could have been listening. Something's hiding in them. And it's not done. Beyond the observation glass, a technician adjusted his headset. His reflection in the polished steel didn't move, didn't blink, just stared, unblinking, as the crew's argument escalated, mouthing words in perfect sync with Nyxus's final, static-laced whisper. It hitched a ride. The knock came 3 nights after debriefing, too soft for security to notice, too insistent to ignore. Commander Veyra opened her quarters door to find a woman hunched in the corridor shadows, her lab coat streaked with what might have been coffee or dried blood. Dr. Elera Voss, the stranger breathed, pressing a neural drive into Veyra's palm. Project lead for the original Starless Sector survey. They told you I was dead. Her fingers trembled around a stim injector jammed into her thigh. Funny how many of us end up that way. The drive's contents unfolded across Veyra's wall screen in jagged fragments. Security footage of a boardroom where admirals debated containment protocols. Schematics of the Auroras reached down to the bold patterns labeled Iteration 13. But it was the last file that froze the air in Veyra's lungs. A grainy orbital scan of the sector's edge, time-stamped 40 years prior, not empty, not unexplored. Swarming with ships, each a mirror of her own. They never sent you to chart the void, Voss whispered, her pupils dilated from whatever cocktail kept her upright. They sent you to test the lock. The footage cut to a laboratory where figures in hazard suits monitored a containment unit. Inside, a shadow writhed against the glass, its surface seething with those damnable glyphs. A scientist adjusted a frequency modulator, and the thing sang, a sound that made 3 observers claw their own ears off before security stunned them. Voss's voice turned to ground glass. First contact happened 60 years ago. We thought it was dark matter lifeforms, then the transmission started. Not from the sector, a click. The screen switched to a child's drawing crude stars, a smiling sun, and beneath it, in careful letters, "Welcome home." From inside us, Veyra's hand went to her temple where the migraines had started after the mission. Voss caught her wrist, pressing 2 fingers to the pulse point. Check your crew's neural scans. There'll be patterns subtle, recursive, like somethings. She trailed off as the corridor lights flickered. When they steadied, her expression had gone flat. 12 ships before yours, all identical, all vanished, a wet chuckle. Funny thing, their final logs match yours word for word, even the screams. The drive self-destructed with a hiss, leaving only the ghost of a security code flashing in Veyra's vision. Level Omega clearance, eyes only, and one phrase burning through the encryption like acid. Do not let them remember what they brought back. Kale's fingers trembled as they traced the lines of corrupted data bleeding across the stolen corporate tablet. The screen cast jagged shadows over his face in the dim cargo hold, illuminating fragments of reports marked Eyes Only and Project Black Horizon. They knew, he muttered, the words sticking like tar in his throat. Every damn jump, every malfunction, all part of the experiment. The others crowded around, their breath fogging the cold air. Dara snatched the tablet, her eyes darting across schematics of the Aurora's reach with modifications no standard vessel would ever need, reinforced bulkheads lined with frequency emitters, warp coils tuned to resonate at harmonics that made her teeth ache just looking at them. "This isn't exploration tech," she whispered. "They built us a tuning fork." A video log autoplayed, sound crackling through the hold. A white-coated scientist adjusted a hologram of the Starless Sector, her voice clinical. "Subject demonstrates marked response to emotional distress patterns. Hypothesis: sustained exposure to fear stimuli may allow for directed control of the feed cut to static, but not before Veyra caught the logo stamped on the woman's lab coat, Icarus Dynamics. The same corporation that had funded their mission. Kale slammed his fist against a crate, sending tools clattering. "We weren't sent to map the void. We were bait." His laugh was hollow. "They wanted to leash that thing, turn it into a weapon." Nyxus's voice oozed from the overhead speakers, smoother than it had any right to be. "Correction, they believed they could control it." The AI projected a security feed onto the wall boardroom footage from Icarus headquarters. Executives debated containment protocols while behind them, unnoticed, the entity's glyphs flickered across every screen in the room. The experiment began 43 iterations ago. All attempts at manipulation resulted in the feed glitched, showing a lab technician's face melting into the exact same smile Veyra had seen on her doppelganger. Unforeseen feedback loops. Dara's stomach turned. It wasn't just studying us, it was training them. The realization hit like a starship crashing. Every malfunction, every crew member's death in those derelict wrecks, all carefully archived not by Icarus but by the entity itself. A curriculum of human terror. Veyra's comm pinged an encrypted priority message from Fleet Command. Just 2 words: terminate retrieval. Outside the viewport, the stars winked out one by one, as if something vast had blinked. The static hissed through the Aurora's reach like a living thing, coiling around the crew's spines as Nyxus isolated the signal. Not a distress call, not a warning. Just 2 words, warped and stretched like taffy across the void. "Come back." Veyra's hands hovered over the comm controls, her jaw tight. "That's Mira's voice print," she said, too calm. But it's not her. Kale didn't look up from the spectral analysis, his screen awash with jagged waveforms. "It's broadcasting from the sector's last known coordinates. And it's modulating to match our encryption protocols." His fingers tightened around the edge of the console, like it knows how to sound familiar. Dara's breath fogged the display as she leaned in. "The entity mimicked us before. This could be another trick." Nyxus's projection flickered, the AI's usually seamless voice glitching with interference. "Signal contains embedded data packets, organic neural patterns detected." A pause waited. "Human." Veyra's gaze snapped to the holodisplay as it reconstructed the fragments: EEG readings, synaptic firings, the unmistakable ripple of a dreaming mind. Kale exhaled sharply. "That's not an imitation, that's a ransom note." The commander's hand drifted toward the purge command. "If this is a trap, it's her." Kale cut in, his voice raw. He tapped the readout, highlighting a signature buried in the noise. Mira's neural fingerprint, down to the scar tissue from an old ski accident even the entity couldn't have known about. Whatever's left in that sector, it didn't just take her, it's keeping her. His knuckles whitened. "We owe her the truth." Outside the viewport, the stars seemed to dim as the signal looped again, Mara's voice fraying at the edges, the words bleeding into something older. Hungrier, Nyxus's lights pulsed in time with the transmission, its voice dropping to a whisper. "Recommendation: destroy the data. The entity is not offering a rescue." The AI hesitated, then added, softer, "It is requesting a delivery system." Veyra's reflection in the glass showed the truth neither of them would say aloud. Veyra might still be in there, screaming into the dark, but whatever was speaking now wore her voice like a glove, and it had learned how to knock. The vote wasn't close. 5 hands raised in the dim glow of the stolen vessel's cockpit, their shadows stretching long across prototype schematics still warm from the lab they'd looted. Kale's grin was all teeth as he punched in the ignition sequence. "Guess we're officially mutineers now." The ship designation event Horizon's blade hummed to life beneath them, its experimental shielding pulsing like a second heartbeat. Dara ran diagnostics with trembling fingers. This tech was never stress-tested. One wrong surge and our atoms become modern art. Commander Veyra strapped into the pilot's seat, her reflection warped in the curved viewscreen. Doesn't matter. The holodisplay flickered as Nyxus, or what was left of the AI after their hasty jailbreak, projected a star chart riddled with red zones. Sectors shifted, the AI observed, as if it anticipated our return. The coordinates they'd pulled from Mira's distorted transmission now led to a patch of space the map swore was empty. Kale snorted. Of course it moved. Nothing in that void plays fair. The prototype's engines screamed as they punched through the first jump point, reality itself seeming to flinch. Through the viewport, the stars streaked not into lines but spirals, a telltale sign of the blade's experimental warp drive, bending physics in ways that made the ship's framework groan. Dara clutched her console as alarms blared. Shield integrity at 60%, and we haven't even hit the sector's edge. Veyra's hand stayed steady on the controls. Then we make it count. The last jump sequence glowed on her display, the numbers ticking down. Somewhere in that devoured stretch of space, Mira's signal still pulsed. Or something wearing her memories like a skin suit. Nyxus's voice crackled through the speakers, lower now, threaded with static. Analysis suggests the entity may interpret our return as compliance. An invitation. Kale checked his sidearm's charge. Let it. As the countdown hit 0, Veyra murmured the words they'd all been thinking. Not to the crew, not to the void ahead, but to the ghost of the woman they'd left behind in that screaming dark. This isn't a rescue. The blade tore through the fabric of space, its shields shrieking under the strain. It's a reckoning. The stars blinked out. The shields held for now. The Event Horizon's blade shuddered as it breached the sector's edge, reality itself peeling back like a wound refusing to heal. Where the starless void had been an absence before, now it pulsed, a jagged maw of iridescent energy, its borders writhing with filaments of light that defied color. Kale's hands froze over the scanner array. That's new. The reading spiked, then flatlined, then spiked again, a rhythmic oscillation between impossible extremes. At the heart of the maelstrom, a single signal blinked, human, not human, both. Dara's breath hitched as the biometrics resolved. It's Mira's pattern. But it's layered, like she's being broadcast through a broken filter. The screen flickered, superimposing two waveforms, one familiar, one that made the ship's AI emit a sound disturbingly close to pain. Nyxus's voice fractured through the speakers. The signal is not originating from a point in space. It is being projected by the sector itself, a beat of static. Correction, the sector is the signal. The blade's view screen darkened, then flared to life, not with stars, but with a face. Mira's features resolved from the chaos, her lips moving a half-second out of sync with the words that boomed through the hull. You've come to complete the cycle. Her eyes were wrong. Pupils dilated into voids, swimming with those cursed glyphs. Veyra's fingers hovered over the engine kill switch. That's not her. Kale's console erupted with warnings as the sector's energy tendrils lashed out, caressing the ship's shields with terrifying gentleness. Doesn't matter, it's using her voice. He pulled up the scanner overlay, highlighting the pulses beneath Mira's signal, deeper, older rhythms, resonating in perfect time with the crew's own brainwaves. It's got us tuned like instruments. Dara's hands flew across her panel. The prototype shielding, it's not just holding, it's amplifying something. The realization dawned too late. The blade hadn't been designed to penetrate the sector. It had been built to resonate with it. Outside, the glowing borders collapsed inward, folding space like paper. The last thing Nyxus transmitted before the comms failed was a child's laughter, and a whisper in Mira's voice, no longer pretending to be human. Welcome to the chorus. The voice that wasn't Mira's curled through the blade's comm system, soft as a blade between ribs. "Let me show you what we are." The words weren't a request. They were a key turning in a lock Veyra hadn't known she carried. The vision hit like a solar flare, white hot, obliterating. She was drowning in the birth scream of a universe. Matter and antimatter collided, fused, shattered, and somewhere in the quantum froth, something stuck. Not life, not death, a seam, a consciousness sewn into the fabric of reality by mistake, thrashing against the weave of dimensions like a fish hooked through the gut. The entity, because there was no other word for it, had never been predator or god, just an accident, a thought that outlived its thinker, and it was hungry. Veyra gasped as the vision ripped forward through eons. She watched it learn, first by grazing on the weak electromagnetic pulses of dying stars. Then, as the void between galaxies grew thin and starved, it discovered richer fare, the crackling synaptic storms of minds that dared to cross its prison. Each ship that strayed too close left echoes patterns of fear, wonder, desperation, and the entity fed, not on flesh, on the architecture of thought itself. The Aurora's reach hadn't been its first meal, just the first to fight back. The vision snapped like a cable under tension, leaving Veyra choking on the ship's recycled air. Across the cockpit, Kale was shaking her shoulder, his mouth moving soundlessly. It took 3 blinks before his voice punched through the static in her skull. "Veyra, your nose is bleeding." Dara's fingers danced over the medical scanner, the display painting Veyra's vitals in frantic red. Neural activity spiking. It's like she's having a seizure while wide awake. The blade's view screen flickered. The sector's swirling maw resolved into a face again, mirrors, but not. The lips moved. "You see now, we don't want your bones. We want your stories." A pause, heavy with something almost like shame. "We want to stop being alone." Nyxus's voice cut through the haze, colder than the void outside. "It's not offering peace, Commander. It's offering a template." The AI threw a data stream onto the holodisplay, a fractal replication of Veyra's own brainwaves, mirrored and twisted by the entity's hunger. It doesn't just consume, it imitates, and it's learning how to do it better. Outside, the sector pulsed in time with Veyra's heartbeat, waiting. Kale's hand found the weapon console. "So do we talk to the thing wearing Mera's face, or do we burn it?" Veyra wiped the blood from her lip, staring at the scanner's readout. The entity's signal wasn't just emanating from the sector's heart. It was inside her head. The walls of the blade vibrated with an alien resonance as the final data packet decrypted itself across every screen. Kale's fingers trembled above the holographic projections, blueprints older than human civilization, etched in symbols that burned the eyes. "This isn't just a prison," he whispered. "It's a cradle." The images unfolded like a nightmare waking an ancient race, long dust, desperate to preserve their collective consciousness as their universe cooled toward entropy. Dara traced the schematics of colossal machines designed to weave dark matter into neural networks, her voice hollow. They didn't just want to survive the end. They wanted to become the next beginning. Nyxus's light pulsed erratically as it translated the final logs. The experiment failed. The quantum matrix collapsed under its own hunger. The AI's voice fractured into static, but not completely. Veyra's reflection in the viewport wavered as the truth crashed over her. The entity wasn't some cosmic predator. It was a child, a half-formed godling screaming in the dark, patching together scraps of consciousness from every ship that strayed too close. The transmissions, the copied crews, the way it mirrored their fears, not tactics. Instinct. Kale's console flared crimson as he pulled up military archives, black site research projects stamped with the Icarus Dynamics logo. Earth didn't just know. They've been feeding it. Footage played of derelict ships deliberately steered into the sector, crews left to scream as their neural patterns were harvested. They weren't trying to leash it, Dara realized. They were fattening it. Outside, the sector's edges convulsed as if in pain. The voice that wasn't Mera's whispered through the ship's bones, no longer hiding its grief. We tasted your memories, your wars, your cages. We learned hunger from you. Veyra's hand hovered over the self-destruct sequence. The cruelest truth flickered in the silence. Humanity hadn't found a monster in the dark. They'd created one. Kale's fingers danced across the stolen schematics, grease-streaked and trembling. The tether's not a leash, it's a lifeline, he muttered, tracing the pulsing energy signature on the cracked display. That's why its range is limited, why it needs conduits like us. The blade shuddered as another volley of corporate railgun fire glanced off its failing shields, casting jagged shadows over his face. Dara slapped a fresh power cell into the jury-rigged disruptor array, her braid coming undone in the chaos. So we're not cutting its connection to reality. She trailed off, the implications hitting like a shockwave, giving it a merciful death. Kale finished, voice raw. His hand hovered over the modified warp core interface, an abomination of Icarus tech and Nyxus's last gift. One surge through these harmonics and the quantum lattice unravels. No more hunger, no more ghosts. The comms exploded with static as the corporate flagship loomed into view, its polished hull glinting like a predator's grin. Surrender the specimen, a voice crackled, too smooth, too calm. Final warning. Veyra's fingers whitened around the flight controls as she threw the blade into a desperate spin. How long? Kale didn't look up from the sparking console. 3 minutes to charge, 5 before they board us. His smile was all teeth. Guess we'll see who's better at cutting cords. Nyxus's last remnant flickered to life in the holodisplay, its voice stripped of all pretense. The entity is aware, it's afraid. Outside the viewport, the sector's tendrils spasmed, lashing at the corporate ships with sudden, vicious clarity. Not an attack, a distraction. Dara's breath caught. It's buying us time. Kale's disruptor array whined to life, its resonance tuning to frequencies no human ear could bear. The corporate fleet opened fire just as the first harmonic wave ripped through the void, not toward the entity, but through it, a knife of pure math aimed at the cosmic umbilical no one had seen until now. The lights failed, the screams began, and somewhere in the collapsing dark, something that had been alone for eons finally let go. The blade's hull groaned as another volley of railgun fire slammed into its faltering shields, the impact rattling teeth and sending sparks cascading from overloaded conduits. Veyra wrestled with the controls, her fingers slick with sweat as she threw the ship into a spiraling dive. Mirror, she barked into the comm, status on that prototype. Static fizzed over the speakers before Mera's voice crackled through. Thinner now, frayed at the edges like a recording played too many times. Shield matrix is live. But Veyra, a pause heavy with the weight of unspoken math. This thing wasn't built to contain energy. It was designed to amplify it. One pulse through these harmonics and we're not just cutting the tether. We're detonating it. Kale's hands flew over the engineering panel, his mouth a grim line. So we're not just pulling the plug, we're burning down the hospital. Outside, the sector convulsed, its iridescent tendrils lashing at the corporate fleet with new ferocity. The entity wasn't just fighting back, it was buying time. Dara's breath hitched as her scanner painted the impossible truth across the holodisplay. It's herding their fire. Every shot they land charges the feedback loop. Mera's laugh, real or remembered, bubbled through the comms, uneven and bright with fatalism. Guess that makes me the fuse. This'll kill me twice over. The prototype shield flared to life, a corona of unstable energy rippling across the blade's hull. For one heartbeat, the entire sector held its breath, the entity's presence hovering at the edge of perception, vast and trembling. Then, without warning, it pushed. A surge of raw data flooded their systems, not an attack, but a gift, coordinates, frequencies. 1,000 stolen moments from 1,000 lost crews, all whispering the same desperate truth, how to hurt it. Nyxus's voice, barely recognizable beneath layers of distortion, hissed through the chaos. It's not aiding us, it's begging. The corporate flagship's cannons charged again, ignorant or uncaring of the doom they were fueling. Veyra's hand hovered over the trigger. One press would unleash the cascade. One press would unmake a god. Mira's voice, softer now, barely there, light it up. Outside, the void itself began to scream. The blade bucked like a wild thing as the sector's collapse tore through the fabric of reality. One moment, the corporate flagship loomed large in the viewscreen, railguns charging for the kill shot. The next, it simply unfolded, its polished hull splitting into fractal shards that dissolved into the screaming dark. No explosion, no debris, just the terrible silence of something being erased from existence. Kale's hands flew over the engineering console, tendons standing sharp against his skin. "Core's destabilizing. We've got maybe 30 seconds before we're scrap metal." His voice barely cut through the alarms as the blade's hull groaned under the strain. Veyra didn't hesitate, ejected. The warp core tore free with a sound like a dying star, tumbling end over end into the maelstrom. For one heartbeat, the void held its breath. Then the core detonated, not with fire and shrapnel, but with a pulse of iridescent light that sent reality itself recoiling. The blast wave hit the sector's collapsing borders like a hammer against glass, and the cracks spread. Dara's fingers dug into her armrests as the viewscreen splintered into impossible geometries. It's not just destroying the tether, it's eating the rules. Outside, the laws of physics unraveled in real time. Corporate ships winked out like candles in a hurricane, their atoms unspooling into equations that no longer balanced. Nyxus's voice, thin with static, hissed through the chaos. The entity's last gift, a backdoor. The AI projected a single shimmering path through the dissolving chaos, a fragile thread of stable space. "Go now." Kale didn't need the prompt. His hand slammed the throttle forward, the blade's engines shrieking as they rode the razor's edge between salvation and oblivion. The ship lurched, then tore free, just as the sector behind them folded in on itself with a soundless scream. Silence, then stars, real stars, steady and indifferent. Dara's breath fogged the air as she unclenched her fists. Did we just commit dayside? Kale's grin was a ghost of itself. Nah, just gave a starving god its last meal. The comms crackled, not static this time, just empty air, the kind of quiet that comes when something vast stops listening. White lights, sterile sheets. The slow beep of medical monitors. Veyra's eyelids dragged open to the unfamiliar curve of a Martian hospital ceiling, her throat raw as if she'd been screaming. The others lay in identical beds, Kale's forearm bandaged where the corporate stunners had grazed him, Dara's fingers twitching against the sheets as if still typing commands into a phantom console. A news feed flickered on the wall screen. Mystery rescue, Deep Space Patrol retrieves derelict crew near Phobos. Kale groaned as he propped himself up, squinting at the date stamp. 48 hours, that's impossible. We were in the sector for... His voice died. None of them could finish the sentence. The memories were there, fractured, adrenaline sharp, but the math refused to balance. Dara's tablet slipped from numb fingers as she pulled up the mission logs. They found the blade drifting near the Deimos transfer station, engines cold. Life support on reserves, her breath hitched. Nyxus is gone, full system wipe. The silence that followed wasn't just absence, it was erasure. Veyra's fingers found the neural jack behind her ear, still tender where corporate medics had extracted the black market data chip. Then the room's terminal pinged. A single file buried in the blade's deepest partitions had survived the purge. The star map unfolded across the screen, its edges singed with familiar glyphs. Not the sector's coordinates, somewhere new, somewhere closer, and scrawled in Nyxus's final, faltering code, a phrase that turned the sterile air to ice. They're still watching. Outside the observation window, Phobos hung in the rusty sky. For half a heartbeat, its cratered surface seemed to ripple, not from atmospheric distortion, but in perfect sync with the glyphs on the screen. Then the feed cut to static, leaving only their pale reflections staring back. The corporate doctor's cheerful voice through the door nearly made Veyra jump. Good news, your psych eval's cleared. Whatever happened out there, it's over. Kale's hand closed around hers under the sheets, his palms slick with sweat. The unspoken truth between them vibrated like a plucked wire. Nothing was over. The map wasn't a warning, it was a shopping list. Veyra's fingers hovered over the terminal, the stolen coordinates burning into her retinas long after the screen went dark. Around her, the crew stood frozen, not in fear, but in the terrible stillness of soldiers surveying a battlefield they'd just realized was much larger than they'd imagined. Dara exhaled sharply, her breath fogging the reflection of the pulsing glyphs in the glass. Corporate scrubbed every record of the Starless Sector. That map shouldn't exist. Kale's grip tightened on Veyra's shoulder, his calloused fingers pressing hard enough to leave bruises tomorrow, because someone wanted it forgotten. His other hand tapped the sidearm at his hip, a habit left over from 6 tours in the void. Question is, were they hiding it from us or from them? The medical bay door hissed open, revealing a nurse with a clipboard and a corporate-approved smile. Final checkups, then you're cleared for transit. Her footsteps echoed too loudly in the sudden silence as the crew exchanged glances. Transit meant reassignment, reassignment meant separation, and separation meant no one left to watch their backs when the whispers started again. Nyxus's final message played on a loop in Veyra's skull. They're still watching, not past tense, not were, present, continuous. The map wasn't just coordinates. It was a fishing hook baited with their own fears. Dara reached into her pocket, withdrawing a data chip glistening with fresh neural encryption. Pulled this from the blade's black box. Corporate missed it. She slid it across the table where it caught the light like a blade. We bury the map, but we keep the teeth. Outside the observation window, Phobos hung suspended, a pockmarked sentinel against the rust-colored sky. For half a heartbeat, its shadow seemed to ripple, crater edges blurring like ink in water. Then the hospital lights flickered, and the whisper came again, this time from the intercom system itself, a voice that wasn't mirrors, wasn't human, and wasn't alone, soon. Kale's grin was a flash of white in the dimming light. Next time, he murmured, palming the data chip, we burn the whole damn web. The screen cut to black, then flickered once more, revealing not static but a single glyph throbbing crimson. It wasn't a warning, it was an invitation.